Today I'm in southern Sweden driving a delicious piece of forbidden European fruit. This is a Volvo XC40. You might be thinking, hey, that's not forbidden, we get those in America. Well, yes, but we don't get this model. This is the plug-in hybrid XC40. Now, rather unfortunately, you don't get this anymore anywhere else because Volvo has discontinued their smallest plug-in hybrid. Not only do I think that's a bummer, but I have hopes that perhaps there could be a resurrection if there was enough interest, because Volvo has recently pushed out their full electrification plans, and they said that was the reason the plug-in hybrid was discontinued in most of the markets where it was available. The reason I decided to rent an XC40 plug-in hybrid from Volvo, yes, this is a rental, Volvo did not provide it even though I am in Sweden, is because I've always been intrigued about this plug-in hybrid system. It has a lot of promise, not just as a plug-in hybrid, but as a full hybrid, if Volvo could ever be convinced to build such a thing, especially for the North American market. Because so far, over 2 days and about 250 miles of driving so far, I've been averaging over 40 miles per gallon even without charging this vehicle. And that's because of the plug-in hybrid system design. It's very different than the plug-in hybrid system we find in the XC60 or the XC90 or the Volvo plug-in hybrid sedans and wagons. This system was designed specifically for Volvo's smaller vehicles, and unfortunately it was only ever used in the XC40. We never really saw its use outside of this platform. But other than that plug-in hybrid system and the charge door over here, it looks exactly like the rest of the XC40 lineup. And that's one of the things I love about it. And I love about Volvo's plug-in hybrids as well, is that they don't look weird. They don't add strange fins or a lot of massive aero treatments all the way around. And in fact, if you want a full electric version of the XC40, recently renamed the EX40, if I'm getting that right, the only real difference is the grille. They just blank it off and you get that blank grille insert. When Volvo designed this small car platform, they intended it to have pretty much every drivetrain that was available, from a regular gasoline engine to a full electric to a mild hybrid, plug-in hybrid, full hybrid, etc. They decided to call the plug-in hybrid and the full electric models Recharge. That's why we have that Recharge badge right there. But unlike other dedicated EV or high-efficiency platforms, you can see here that Volvo didn't decide to compromise the shape. It's still upright, it's still boxy, we still have a ton of ground clearance. We're still getting, again, over 40 miles per gallon. While we're talking about that fuel economy, it's important to know that we have Cross-Climate 2 tires on this model because, of course, it is November and I am in Scandinavia, so it has to have winter-appropriate tires. And they are relatively wide, 235 width. If this was in the United States, I suspect the EPA would probably give it approximately 44 to 45 miles per gallon combined. If you're looking at the WLTP ratings or the UK ratings, those are significantly higher just because of the way that fuel economy test is done. Moving around to the back, you can see it looks exactly like the models on sale in the United States, except for that T4 Recharge badge, which was never sold in our market. Again, one of the big reasons to get the XC40 though, over especially some of the sleeker competition in this segment, is the big cargo area in the back. Not only does that upright roofline give us a lot of practicality back there in terms of headroom, we also get a pretty decent cargo area. Although, if I lift up that load floor, nope, no spare tire under there, although there is a little bit of storage. Now let's get to the important part, Volvo's most efficient hybrid system. Under this hood, we find an engine that's related to the one in the XC40, XC60, etc., except that it's missing a cylinder. This is a 1.5-liter 3-cylinder turbo, producing just under 130 horsepower in its own right. It's mated not to an 8-speed automatic like we find in the other Volvos, but a 7-speed DCT on that side of the engine compartment. The dual-clutch transmission makes a lot of sense because it's inherently more efficient than a traditional automatic, if nothing else because it lacks a torque converter. To compensate for the lack of smoothness that you get in a torque converter, and of course to add extra power, we have an 82 horsepower electric motor. It's mated only to the input shaft of the even geared section of the DCT. So it can drive the vehicle forward using 2nd gear or 4th gear, or technically 6th, even though apparently it never actually uses that gear. The engine though, it can drive the vehicle forward using any of the 7 gears. The electric motor not only allows smooth starts and stops in stop and go and slow and go traffic because it can just drive the vehicle forward in 2nd gear, it also smooths out the shifts, well, most of them at any rate, because as you're starting off from a standstill going forward, the electric motor will be driving you down using 2nd gear. Then the engine starts using a different motor, then the engine can actually drive the vehicle forward using first gear, while the motor is using second gear. Then it can shift and the engine can use second gear, while the motor's also delivering power via second gear. It can go to third, motor still using second gear, etc. Interestingly though, when you're in the all-electric mode, it will shift between gears 2 and 4. Once you hit around 50 to 55 miles an hour or so, the vehicle knows that it's more efficient to use fourth gear instead of second, so you will feel the shift in all-electric operation. The big thing though is that thanks to the approximately 10 kilowatt hour battery pack, about 8 kilowatt hours of it or so is usable, you'll get around 25 miles of real world range and about 40 miles per gallon, even if you're not treating it gently. On highway runs here at 70 miles an hour, we were averaging 41 MPG. The only major downside to this hybrid design seems to be the 1.5 liter 3-cylinder turbo. As you can see, it does shake around a little bit more than the 4-cylinder. It's not as well balanced, and it sounds a bit different as well. I have to say that this 1.5 liter engine is not quite as smooth as the BMW 1.5 liter 3-cylinder. Let's take a quick look around the inside, keeping in mind that this is not a current model on sale for Volvo, and that's why we find the older infotainment software here in the dashboard. The more recent versions of the XC40 and the C40, they have the latest Google Android Automotive, I should say, based infotainment system, which gives us a larger format for smartphone projection. This software is definitely slower. So if you ever wondered, how far Volvo has come over the few years and why they make constant updates to their products, I think that's a really good explanation of that. The rest of the interior, though, that's very similar to what's on sale in the US right now. So we have this geometric pattern in these trim areas. It is backlit, giving us ambient lighting at night. So it actually kind of shines through there. It's difficult to see in this lighting. You can sort of see it over there with that particular trim panel. We get lots of storage space, so we get big storage cubbies right there in the front doors. I have a bag here in the passenger seat strapped in right now at the moment, but lots of storage space going on here in the center console as well, which has been pretty handy because I've got tons of cameras and smartphones and things like that, all that going on there. This plastic area of the center console, that does scratch pretty easily. It's something that I've seen in other XC40s and C40s, so certainly keep that black plastic area in mind. If you were to buy something like this, you probably would want to wrap that if you want to keep it looking pristine over time. Same thing goes for the plastic there. Now, the other thing you'll notice, because this doesn't have the most recent interior or infotainment systems, is that the instrument cluster still has the older instrument cluster software from Volvo. And then we have the same steering wheel we find in the other C40 and XC40 models, including the buttons over here for the adaptive cruise control system, the buttons over here that work with the infotainment system, and the pop-up over there in that instrument cluster. The driver's side has a 2-position memory over there, and the driver and front passenger seats have the same range of motion, including an extending thigh cushion that's manual. This model doesn't have a moonroof, but as you can see, I have lots of headroom going on here, and the driver's seat is not all the way down in its tracks. If I lowered it down, you can see I'd have quite a lot of headroom there. If I hop into the back seat with the driver's seat comfortably adjusted for me, let's see what kind of room I have back here. Got a lot of crazy stuff going on in the car right now since I'm heading back to the airport, including things that I forgot to pack. You'll see that legroom, it's not overly generous. I could logically put that seat further forward and in a more upright position. Right now it's in its lowest position, suitable for me, because see, I have tons of headroom back here, and that's why the XC40 has always been so practical, because we have that relatively large cargo area in the back, got a lot of luggage back there, and we still have enough room on the inside for especially taller people to be pretty comfortable, as long as you don't mind sitting more upright in the front seats. Since this model does not have the current Volvo software, it actually has what I think is the better display over here for the power gauge. It shows you where the power is going to come from the electric source or the gasoline source. Don't worry, I'm not holding the camera, someone else in the car is at the moment. And that gives you an ability to try and stay in electric only mode if you want to. So it's dynamic. As you can see, if I start to dig into the throttle a bit more, that line will actually change as the power demand grows or goes back. So you can see it actually adjusts there a little bit, and it's going to depend on the battery state of charge. Right now you can see I have about 14 miles of electric range left. If I exceed that for any length of time, even if I'm going gently, then it's going to turn the gasoline engine on. Or if I dig into it harder, you can see immediately it turns the gas engine on. If it goes back down below that, you can see that the oil droplet, that is still illuminated. Now it just turned off because the gasoline engine has just turned off. It is influenced by the drive mode. So for instance, if I engage the pure mode, you'll notice it goes all the way over there to that side, but if I floor it, it will still turn the gasoline engine on. So for instance, if I just slow down a little bit here and then romp on the throttle, you can see that the gas engine turned on, and then the active portion of the display moved all the way over there. If I engage the powered mode, then you can see we get a pretty traditional tachometer. As we get this hybrid out on the road, let's talk more about how the hybrid system is designed, because that's truly important to understand why this drives the way that it does. Unlike most dual clutch vehicles, if I creep along here, it feels very smooth. Coming to a stop, stop and go, slow and go traffic, that's very smooth, because again, the electric motor is connected to the input shaft of the even geared side of the DCT. I'll go ahead and put this in the electric only drive mode now, because we have about 16 miles of indicated range. Even though we have only 82 horsepower, this feels relatively peppy given its size, because we get a reasonable amount of torque and we get the torque multiplication benefit of the dual clutch transmission. But there is one weird twist. That's gonna happen here really soon, because we're gonna go up about 70 kilometers an hour. Now we're at 85, it's gonna happen any moment. There we go. We have this moment where there's nothing, and then we get more power. That's because the DCT has shifted from gear 2 to gear 4. But the important thing about this transmission design is that the motor is again connected to the input shaft of that side of the transmission. It does not go through a clutch. There's no clutch between the electric motor and the transmission. So in order to switch gears, it has to completely cut power to the electric motor, change gears, and then it can reapply the power. That is really the only thing to know about this DCT, and the only feel that is unusual compared to most other hybrids out there. Because the electric motor is directly connected to that input shaft, as I slow down here because there's some road work, regenerative braking feel is incredibly even and incredibly consistent. Because the electric motor is essentially always connected to the wheels, not only do we get that excellent low-speed start-stop feel, you also get extra torque being delivered as the engine is changing gears. So for instance, if I slow down here, put this into its power mode, go ahead and really slow down here, and then floor it, you'll notice that unlike most DCTs that have a bit of an interruption in power delivery, this does not. The electric motor is still able to assist with power delivery between those gear shifts, so it doesn't have that harsh feel that you find in some DCT-equipped vehicles without a hybrid system like this. Also important, because of that direct connection, regenerative braking is very, very smooth. You don't have to send power back through the transmission and shift and downshift as you're decelerating like you do in, say, a Hyundai or a Kia plug-in hybrid or most BMW plug-in hybrids, because those use traditional 8-speed automatic transmissions. So if I just decelerate gently here, I am in the B mode for enhanced regenerative braking. No shifting, nothing like that. It's very smooth, very consistent, very Lexus hybrid-like actually, all the way down to a complete stop. Because the electric motor decides not to shift between gears 2 and 4 as you're regenerative braking, it'll do that once you've come to a complete stop. Then you take back off again in electric only mode, and it's really, really smooth. Now, 82 horsepower, it's not going to get you 0 to 60 terribly quickly in electric only mode. In my testing out here in Sweden, it took 10.5 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles an hour. Although that's certainly peppy enough for most daily driving activities. It's actually pretty similar to a lot of plug-in hybrids out there. You can easily get up on the highway at those speeds, and you can easily go highway speeds in the pure electric mode as well. You can actually go 120 kilometers an hour, 130 kilometers an hour pretty easily in electric only. Now, if the gasoline engine joins the party, obviously it's going to be faster. 0 to 60 happened in this model in 8.1 seconds. Keep in mind, this is the least powerful version of the plug-in hybrid system. You can choose, or you could choose, sorry, between 211 horsepower and 257 horsepower. Sorry if I said 247 earlier. That's the horsepower output of the American market B5 XC40. You might be thinking to yourself, hang on, we get more power than the American model, but we don't get 0 to 60 that's as swift. That one will do 0 to 60 in 6.1 seconds. It's going to be 6.9 seconds for the more powerful plug-in hybrid system. The reason is most likely the curb weight and the way the power is delivered. We don't have the same gear ratios because we don't have the same transmission. We also have about 200 pounds of extra curb weight. This model weighs 4,008 pounds, but it is about 700 pounds lighter than the full electric version of the XC40. That is, of course, the swiftest because you can get over 400 horsepower in that model. In addition to the heavier curb weight, this also has a different horsepower and torque curve because the core engine is based around the T2 engine that Volvo used to have in their lineup, producing 129 horsepower. Interestingly, this engine is no longer available on its own in Europe. Actually, not available at all, I should say, because the base engine for Europe is now the B3 engine, which is a mild hybrid 4-cylinder. They've decided to kill off the 1.5-liter 3-cylinder entirely from the lineup. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any 6-0 stopping scores. I don't think it would be fair. It's been really wet and cold out here, and of course I have winter tires on this model, so it wouldn't be representative of what you'd find in any other market. I suspect, however, it's going to be substantially similar to the rest of the XC40 lineup. Having 200 pounds of extra curb weight in here is simply like having an additional adult passenger in the back, so it's not a big deal, and we still have relatively wide tires on this model, 235 width tires, and a really well-designed suspension. One of the interesting things about the XC40 is that the entire XC40 lineup has a really nicely done ride, really nicely done suspension, and also a surprising amount of ground clearance. So as we get out on a gravel road like this, you don't really have to worry, even though we don't have all-wheel drive, about clearance. All-wheel drive obviously is the one bummer about this plug-in hybrid system. Again, I would love to see the addition of either a mechanical or an electrical all-wheel drive system if they tried to resurrect this in the future, but that is one of the reasons I think that the plug-in hybrid system went off into the sunset. No all-wheel drive. The counterpoint to that, of course, is fantastic fuel economy. We've been averaging 43 miles per gallon over a week of mixed driving this purely as a hybrid. When I was able to charge, I discounted those drive sections from that fuel economy total, but when I was able to plug in, obviously that number went up and up from there. And real world range is going to be around 22 to 25 miles based on my driving out here. It's going to be a little bit different depending on how much highway and how much city driving you're doing, but this is a reasonable amount of range. The usable capacity of this battery pack is just under 9 kilowatt hours, and that puts this significantly lower than the XC60 or the XC90, but this is also significantly more fuel efficient. The XC40 plug-in hybrid is the kind of vehicle that for some reason European companies resist bringing to North America, and I think that's really sad. The closest we ever really got to this was the Audi A3 plug-in hybrid, and of course that came in the Sport Wagon, which was fantastic. Travis actually owned one of those, and I'm kind of jealous about that because the fuel economy there was also pretty darn fantastic. The electric range, it's not extraordinary. If they wanted to change that for a future version, they could logically replace this battery pack with maybe the same one out of the XC90 or XC60, and they could give this 40 plus miles of electric range. But I don't actually think that's necessary. I think 20 plus miles of electric range, reasonable performance, and solid fuel economy afterwards is fantastic. But they could also cut the battery pack in half or less than that, or even more, I should say, than that, give us maybe a 2 to 4 kilowatt hour battery pack, and still give us a 40 mile per gallon solid fuel efficient hybrid option. In all honesty, however, Volvo wouldn't even need to do that. If they could give us a battery pack that could still deliver 80 horsepower to that electric motor for a short amount of time, reduce the costs, maybe a 2 to 3 kilowatt hour battery pack, and still give us 40 miles per gallon, this would be truly fantastic. Lexus has proved that American shoppers love hybrids, they want hybrids. Yes, they're interested in plug-in hybrids as well, but there is a big market for a really fuel efficient 40 plus mile per gallon hybrid in this segment, and nobody else is doing it outside of Lexus with the Lexus NX. The NX is a little bit bigger than this, but it's not that much bigger on the inside. This is significantly more premium, significantly smoother, significantly more powerful than the Lexus UX. It's actually pretty darn close to the Lexus NX, and I think they could charge Lexus NX prices for a 40 plus mile per gallon hybrid like this. Let me know what you think about that down there in the comments section. Should Volvo bring something like this to the American market? Should BMW, should Mercedes, should Audi try something like this? I think Volvo would be the one that could do it the best because this hybrid system already exists. All they have to do is unlock the vault, break the tooling out, and just build us the hybrid that American shoppers have been clamoring for. If you want a hybrid with excellent fuel economy, you have to get a Lexus. And if you're not a fan of Lexus styling, you're not a fan of the Lexus planetary power split hybrid system and the way that it drives, you don't have any other options. This, however, feels very different. This drives like an electric car when it's in its electric mode, admittedly with that shift. And when it's not in electric mode, when you want to drive it harder or drive it more sporty, it has that DCT feel that shoppers also love. So if, like me, you think Volvo should be building more of these, comment down there in the comments section below, send Volvo an email, text them, tweet them, whatever. I also have to say that the 3-cylinder engine, even though it is a little bit rougher than the average 4-cylinder, it's not really a problem because Volvo has put a reasonable amount of sound deadening between the engine compartment and the passenger compartment, more than we find actually in a decent number of other Volvos, and that really makes the 3-cylinder engine a non-issue. Even when it's working a little bit harder because the system is charging its battery, it does have a charge mode, it actually is not objectionable, and it has kind of an interesting and different sound than the 4-cylinder engines in their lineup. Now, on the subject of fuel economy, I should mention one thing. When a lot of folks are talking about the excellent fuel economy we find in so many vehicles in Europe, they're often talking about imperial gallons. And remember that the British gallon is larger than the American gallon. The American gallon is around 20% smaller. When I'm talking about fuel economy in this video, I am, however, talking about US gallons because fortunately the Volvo infotainment system allows you to select whether you want US measurements or imperial measurements or, of course, metric measurements. This model has been averaging over 41 miles per gallon on the US MPG scale. And again, we've been driving it pretty quickly out here in Sweden because the speed limits, especially in rural Sweden, are actually relatively high, especially compared against a lot of states in the US. That's what's so impressive about this hybrid system and one of the benefits of the dual clutch transmission. Unlike, say, a Honda hybrid system where we have just one fixed ratio between the engine and the wheels, this engine has 7 to choose from, and the motor has 2 different ratios to choose from. So not only can it optimize the ratio for the gasoline engine, it can also optimize the ratio for the electric motor. And that's one of the reasons that Volvo developed this system in this exact way. The weather's worth mentioning because this week it has been relatively cold. Currently it is 29 degrees outside, and cold weather doesn't just impact EV fuel economy, it impacts regular gasoline fuel economy and of course hybrid fuel economy as well. So keep that in mind when we're talking about the 41 MPG score. I know it's wishful thinking, but I would love to see Volvo spend a little bit more time and effort to resurrect this hybrid system and give it to us in a next generation XC40 or a refreshed XC40, because there is an awful lot to love. Performance is solid. You'll get between 7 and 8 seconds 0 to 60, which is definitely good for a vehicle in this category. And the fuel economy is honestly very similar to the Lexus UX, which is significantly slower than this model. And this is the least powerful version of this drivetrain. The drivetrain does feel a little bit unusual compared to what we have seen in other hybrids in North America, but I suspect most people will get used to it. The only oddity really is when you're in the pure mode, the all-electric mode, going from 2nd to 4th gear. It does feel a little unusual because, of course, it's shifting gears like you would expect. And there is no torque converter to smooth out that shift like we find, for instance, in Hyundai and Kia hybrids that do use a traditional torque converter automatic transmission. I think that's a small price to pay. However, for the efficiency that we get out of this system, its relative performance, and the fact that it doesn't compromise practicality at all, I do think that if we were to get one in North America, the only thing that Volvo would need to do is stuff a tiny little electric motor on the rear axle, because you cannot get this with all-wheel drive. That is the one bummer. I think they could get away, however, with a smaller battery pack. They could get away with calling this a full hybrid, not giving us the charge door, cutting that battery pack down significantly to maybe 2 or 3 kilowatt hours, and give us a solid, decent performance full hybrid that still got 40 plus miles per gallon. Now, I would also love to see a model with a bigger battery pack that would give us maybe 40 miles of all-electric range. In this package, that would be all kinds of fantastic. Let me know what you think about all that down there in the comment section below. And just on a wish list basis, if this was ever going to be available in the United States, how much would you be willing to pay for it? And that is probably the biggest unanswered question. Of course, the one that we're never going to get an answer to is, why did Volvo never bring it to North America? And will it ever come back? Be sure and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and I will see all of you later.